morning. Welcome to Lovebabz Love Talk. It is Thursday. I'm not playing any music today. The Aretha Franklin tribute will go on tomorrow. But today I'm talking to a very important person and a woman who I happen to like very much. Alicia Caraballo, who is the interim executive director over at JUNTA for Progressive People, right? Action. For Progressive Action. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
How's everything?
Everything is good.
So the work that you're doing now is more intense now, I think, than ever before.
Yes. Didn't start out that way.
Yes. Tell us about JUNTA.
So JUNTA 49 was founded 49 years ago. My mom was actually a founder of JUNTA.
Really?
Yes. And so 49 years ago, 1969, which a lot was happening
Mm-hmm.
in those days. And we had moved here from New York City, as many, others looking for kind of better opportunities here. And my mom got very much involved in kind of community. It was kind of in the midst of the civil rights movement. A lot was going on. And so she was able to get 16 other Puerto Rican activists who each put in $1,000.
Mm-hmm.
And they bought
That was a lot of money.
That was a lot of money then.
Yes.
So 1,000, and not a lot of money that they were
it's
making.
a lot of money now, but it's a lot of money.
People.
Yes.
Yeah, these were working people. And so they each put in $1,000, and they were able to buy a house that actually sits right across from Clemente. It's on the corner of Howard and Columbus.
You know what? I remember this.
Do you? Okay. And so my mom at that time was kind of working with young people, with the youth and Puerto Rican youth. And so she did that on the first floor, and then JUNTA was kind of born and created on the second floor.
Mm-hmm.
And it stayed there for many, many years. And then at some point it moved, to Fairhaven.
And what does the word JUNTA mean?
So JUNTA means like together. JUNTA is, sort of together and group. And so even the name, I think, really sort of says, who we are. I mean, it was established then to really provide services, case management services, direct services, as well as advocacy, and as well as kind of maintaining the cultural integrity of, in those days, it was primarily Puerto Ricans, because that was, those were kind of the majority of Latinos. We've seen that over the years that has changed, and we've
Mm-hmm.
become a much more diverse Latino community. And JUNTA has been able to sort of continue to provide that. So when you think about JUNTA, I mean, those words really talk about kind of togetherness. It talks about progress, and it talks about action.
So talk a little bit about the diversity in the Latino community, because I think, when I was growing up, all you knew was Puerto Ricans.
Right. Mm-hmm.
I had no awareness of anybody else. It wasn't until I was much older that I knew people from Dominica and all these other places, South America and Mexico and all these places, that I started to get an awareness for different kinds of Latinos.
Yeah. So, and kind of same here. I mean, my parents met my parents both sort of independently, separately, came to New York, as many Puerto Ricans did, looking for kind of better opportunities and for work. And so they met in New York, and they lived in New York, and I was born in New York. And so, as well for me, I mean, my community was very much a Puerto Rican community.
Mm-hmm.
We lived in the Bronx. We grew up in the Bronx. And then coming here was a huge change, because, coming here, the community was very different. It was
So
not
how
the
did
Bronx.
you get here? Like your parents said, listen, we're going to move to Connecticut.
No, we actually got here. Interesting. We were one day, my mom and I and my brother, we were shopping in Southern Boulevard, and we ran into a friend of my mom, someone that she had worked with. She had worked in a factory, and she had worked with this woman, Cecilia, and they had become, good friends. And,
Mm-hmm.
As things happen, people kind of go their separate ways. And so we ended up running into Cecilia, Southern Boulevard. And it turns out that she was living here in New Haven. She'd just gone to New York, I guess, for the day. And so she invited us to come and visit. And so we came to visit. We were supposed to stay a week. We ended up probably cutting that down to about half the time. Part of it is because it was such a difference here. And Cecilia was very much, I mean, I remember she was a member of Reverend Marsach, Abraham Marsach's church,
Mm-hmm.
on Howard Avenue.
Mm-hmm.
And so we spent the time that we were here visiting, we spent a lot of time in that church, because Cecilia was very active, she and her family. And so our first visit to New Haven was not, we were not, it was very different for us. And so we went back to New York, and then a year later, just by chance, my mom and my stepfather ended up back in Connecticut visiting someone, and my stepfather was offered a job at Pratt and Whitney. And so then it was, whether to work in Hartford plant or in North Haven. And so because my mom, we knew at least a family here at least in New Haven. And so he decided on Pratt and Whitney. And so that's when we moved from New York here. And during the summer. During that summer, I happened to have been in Puerto Rico spending the summer with my aunt. And so I was not at all happy about this move. Here.
Okay.
I had lived. All I knew was, New York, and so it was it was a big adjustment. And of course, this community in those days was very different. It was not. I grew up right on Asylum Street, and then my mom bought a house on Orchard Street, which is actually right across the street from where Bowen and Peter's dance studio used to be. So if you remember, it's kind of a white iron, kind of a wrought iron fence house.
Yes.
So that's the house that I grew up in.
Oh my goodness.
And so I grew up.
So how old were you when you got here?
So I was.
Were you a teenager?
I went to 8th grade here. So
okay.
I was about 13.
So you were just the beginning. Yes.
So I was kind of about 13. And so at least in my community, so I grew up right Congress Avenue. I remember Congress and Baldwin, and so I grew up. There was a roller skating rink that was on Davenport Avenue, and so that's kind of where I grew up. And so because we had a kind of small Puerto Rican community, my mom and my aunt, who retired as a guidance counselor from Lee High School many years ago, we got very much involved in terms of kind of community. We got very much involved with the Catholic Church in Puerto Rican, as well as the Pentecostal Church. And so it was a growing Puerto Rican community. So I it's same like you. I don't remember much. I mean, I didn't know Dominicans, or I knew about South America just basically from what I've learned, in school. And so, obviously over the years, this community then changed to include more folks and more people. And so, in my experience here, eventually I ended up working for the Board of Ed and Adult Ed. And so,
and that's where I know you from,
yes,
because I worked with you
at Adult Ed.
At Adult Ed for a few years.
That's right.
And then you left there.
I left it. Well, I retired. So I left. So
which is, I don't even know what that means for you.
Well, right. Because I literally retired. And then a month after I retired, I then served on the Board of Ed. The mayor had asked me to serve.
Yes.
So I did that for about 2.5 years.
Yep.
And I was serving someone else's term. And then last October, some board members, actually, JUNTA board members approached me and asked me if I would be available and interested in serving as kind of the interim executive director of JUNTA. At that time, there was some changes, quite a bit of transition that was going on in JUNTA. And so it was interesting because none of them really knew my history and knew about my connection with JUNTA in terms of my history. And so, and of course, while I was at Adult Ed, I was very much connected with JUNTA because that was one of the satellites and continues to be. We offer ESOL, English as a Second Language classes. At that time, we were also offering GED classes, and so, and that was a collaboration which continues to this day. Continues with JUNTA and with the board and with adult education with the Board of Ed.
Well, people are saying you're doing such good work over there.
We do great work.
And so you don't want to be the executive director?
So no. For me, part of it, and even the reason why I retired from the Board of Ed was not because I was tired or ready. It was really in terms of family situation. It was a difficult. 2014 was a very difficult year for me. My mom had moved to. My mom lives in Orlando, Florida. Had moved there about 28 years ago, primarily because of her health. She has rheumatoid arthritis, and
this weather
wasn't going to help her. And so that's how she ended up in Orlando. And so 2014, she ended up with some medical issues, and it was also the year that my aunt passed away, my stepfather passed away, and so it was really for all of those reasons that I retired. It wasn't because I was tired, and because it's just me. And so with my mom, so really for the last 4 years, I've been sort of back and forth to Florida, and now have decided my mom will be 88 in February, and so at this point have decided, to move to Florida because at this point I need to be, I need to be, the back and forth. I've hesitated all of this time because New Haven has, been my community, and I've been involved, certainly at the Board of Ed and as well as some community. I serve, on a number of boards here as well. And so it's been my community, and, my granddaughter and, is here, and friends and so on. But at this point, I need to be with my mom.
Listen.
So that's a reason.
I understand that. I do. So what is Junta facing these days, Alicia?
So Junta, it's interesting. I came in October, and literally like 3 weeks before I started at Junta was Hurricane Maria hit. And so, and even coming into Junta, they were facing some very difficult challenges. I mean, if you recall back in the fall, we still didn't have a budget, which meant that we still didn't know, there was money that was committed to Junta from the state in terms of, just to be able to operate. Our funding is about 40% in terms of kind of state and the rest is obviously foundations and donors and so on. And so when I came in, we were kind of in the midst of that, didn't know if we were even going to get the state funding that was, committed to Junta. And as it turns out, it did not come.
Whoa.
Only a very small portion of that came.
Whoa.
And so there were obviously some significant.
And you're still providing services.
And so we
at the level that you are accustomed to providing
and so
them.
We decided, and so here we are, again, providing case management services. We have clients that come in every day, for all kinds of assistance and help. Obviously some immigration. Junta has been very public about and advocating in terms of the support for dreamers and immigration rights and so on. And so this is an agency that really is right in the community doing, a lot of this very not easy, very difficult work. And so here we are looking at not knowing what our financial situation is going to be, but obviously sort of continuing to provide the services. And then we have Hurricane Maria. And we knew that that was going to impact our community.
And you're talking about the hurricane that displaced so many people from Puerto Rico.
Displaced so many people in Puerto Rico, and because we have a large community here, Puerto Rican community, and because New Haven has always been a welcoming place.
Yes.
And so we knew that we would end up. And so, to the city's credit, to the mayor and Rick Fontana, who we love dearly, they immediately understood that this hurricane, even though it happened in Puerto Rico, but it was really kind of a disaster emergency situation here for our own community. And so immediately they pulled together kind of all of the agencies that provide services in our community to have a plan, because we knew and we were expecting that we were going to see families. And of course, the families that we saw were the families that immediately needed the most help. So the families that came were the ones that had, medical issues, that couldn't stay, obviously, in a situation where they had no electricity and they, the housing and services. And so those we knew would be the first. And so Junta was the agency that was sort of designated to provide, to coordinate and to centralize these services. And so we did it, and we were able to do it successfully. Because of the collaboration and because of the city and the structure that was pretty much set up.
And you all actually help families come and resettle here.
That's right. So we
not one or two families.
No, we served over 450 families, and that means like over 1,000 individuals. Because in each case, each family, each individual needs services, right? From the children in terms of school services and making sure
housing, everything,
housing, medical, and so on. And so, and we knew right from the beginning, because Junta is a very small staff. We only have 4 full-time people.
Whoa.
We have two full-time case managers, We have kind of an operations person, and we have our administrative assistant. The rest of us are all part time.
Mm-hmm.
And but there's volunteers and interns and people who sort of come. And so we knew right away that in order for us to provide the services that we needed obviously to kind of triage and to process and to be able to connect people to the services that they needed. And we had wonderful partners: Fairhaven Clinic, Hill Health Center, the Board of Ed, NeighborWorks, Neighborhood Michelle Rodriguez. We just had a great sort of network of services that we were able then to, facilitate and to be able to get folks. And then, of course, we had FEMA and we had disaster relief 211 folks that were basically housed at Junta,
Mm-hmm.
who were able also to, to see, families as they came in and to be able to coordinate on these services. And believe it or not, we still have people that are in hotels.
Really?
Yep, we have. It's a small number at this point, probably about maybe 20.
Mm-hmm.
Because many have secured housing, and even as we speak, we're still helping folks again in terms of security deposits and who are finding jobs and so on. And so, they're moving out.
And what are their spirits like, Alicia? This can't be easy. I remember when Katrina happened and we took families in from New Orleans
mm-hmm.
who were displaced, and they stayed for a time, and then they
Right.
sort of went back. But I remember the despair, sitting with, because I was an alderman at the time, and sitting with a family that had relocated into my community, into Beaver Hill. And I remember sitting there, and she had her babies, and she was so, she was worn thin.
Yes, right.
And even though she was surrounded by people who were helping her and all that, you could really physically see the despair.
Yes, it's been very difficult. We can only imagine for someone to literally see their home in some ways being washed away, and literally coming with what they have on their backs. So and of course I think in some ways, kind of the human spirit, what happens is, and so we see families, and so people sort of get into that, sort of a survivor, kind of but then what you do see is obviously, the reality then sits in. And so mental health services, and so counseling, and so, the ability for people to be able to kind of talk about and to be able to kind of work through.
Mm-hmm.
And so sometimes that takes a little bit of longer. Sometimes we would see families who just kind of come in, and it's almost like you don't really realize the reality of what's happening. And so, they're really we're trying to help. And then, of course, many of the families that we saw, they were here because they had families who were here and bought them here.
Okay.
And
okay.
so if you can imagine, you have a situation where you have a brother or a mother, elderly parents, and that situation. And so for families here, that was a priority to get their families here. And so what we saw were, some folks who had no place to live, and others who, and still to this day, continue to stay with families in apartments and in places that really there is not a lot of space for them. Because as you know, when you're taking in a family, now you're opening up your home to, to 1, 2, 3, or 4 additional individuals, how many there is. And so you do the best that you can. And so, we continue to try to work and help, particularly those host families, and try to help some of these families. But, as we know, we're in a housing crisis here. And so housing has been kind of the most difficult challenge for many of our families.
I could imagine, because it's difficult for people who are already here to find housing, and affordable housing.
That's right.
Affordable housing can mean anything at any time for people.
That's right. That's right.
So,
That's right.
All right. So, Alicia, so you have that to contend with, and you're still contending with. And now you have this whole deportation of immigrants.
Right.
Right. You have that in your lap.
Right.
And you can't not deal with that because
Right.
it's in your lap.
That's right. And so one of the things that we, fortunately, what's wonderful about Junta is kind of the network of of agencies and people and individuals and donors who understand and support our work. So even in terms of that work, because again, we just don't have the capacity, the staff capacity. So currently we do have sort of legal, we have lawyers who are kind of pro bono work, who are essentially meeting with families who are facing deportation and making the difficult and helping them make the difficult decisions about what happens when, you know, if you're deported, and what happens to your children, and what happens to your situations. And so we provide, you know, those services again on a limited basis, because we can only do as much as we can with what we have.
Do you feel ICE trolling you? I mean, do you feel their presence around?
You know, not. We're just kind of reminded of it. You know, we you know, it's not something that we sort of, you know, live and kind of fear day in, but there are moments where we're reminded about the reality of what's happening.
Have you ever seen this in your life? Have you ever seen this level of, I don't know what to call this.
No, I mean, the level of, in some ways, and I guess for me, what's happening, I guess, you know, you get to a point where you kind of reflect sometimes and you think back. And so I'm obviously coming into Junta reminded of my own history in Junta, and reminded of, like, I remember sitting at Lee High School auditorium at a community meeting with my mom. And again, these were days that I was much younger. I was in high school. And I remember the news about Martin Luther King being, you know, there are moments that I remember in terms of that history. And so in some ways I'm kind of reminded of the history. And in some ways it's almost like we're sort of back to some of these same kinds of issues. And maybe in some ways even worse, because, you know, we have a political system that in some ways is also instilling some of this negative feelings about, you know, about whether it's immigration, about diversity, about who we are as a country. And so, you know, yeah, it's a very, very difficult time. And it becomes even more difficult because we're also then faced with the reality within our state and our city of limited resources. And so it becomes even more, you know, it becomes even more difficult for those of us who are doing this work and not knowing, you know, where we're going to see, you know, here we are in 2018. We started a new fiscal year in July of 2018, and we still at this point don't know whether we can even apply for state funds. We don't even know what's going to be available. And so the reality of even the future of Junta at this point is serious.
So do you think you spend a lot of your time being in I mean, you're no stranger to the political world. Do you find yourself spending a lot more time on the political side of things, because you've got to get in front of legislators' faces? I mean, you've got to press to say, see Junta.
Well, you know, yes, and to that, I mean, part of what has helped Junta. It was almost like, you know, I don't even know. I guess some God's intervention. You know, as I said, I started in October, and about a month before, Paula Cericchio started also at Junta as working in terms of advocacy and community engagement. And so, and the work that we've done in terms of Hurricane Maria, in a large credit, I mean, she was phenomenal. Paula knew advocacy, had experienced it with advocacy, and was able to really, again, pull together all of our legislators, including our federal legislators, Senator Blumenthal, Rosa DeLauro, Chris Murphy. It was really able to kind of pull all of that together to really help us through. So as we face situations with families who disability and issues, and even in Fairhaven Clinic, even issues about the prescriptions and not being able to pay and to be able to help families. It was really, to some extent, Paula's, and I was very fortunate because as the interim director, we have no development person. So we have a part-time development person. And of course, at a time like this, when development is so important, we're even struggling with that in terms of trying to, we have a board member who came off the board to help us, retired, and is helping us with development and is doing just, a great job. And so Paula, and let me just, again, a shout out to Juan Candelario and to our, and to our state reps and Senator Looney and Al Palilillo and Tony Walker. I mean, they have been phenomenal. And part of Juan Candelario bill is actually the only money basically that we have at this point seen from the state.
Whoa.
Where he was able to, through this bill, to be able to provide resources for the evacuees. But again, even though we've seen money, it really is not new money. It's money that we didn't get, last year. So, but we are so thankful and appreciative, and in some ways, again, it's been kind of all of those champions. And fortunately, Paula was really the person out in the community doing a lot of this work, while we're back at our center on Grand Avenue, making sure that each client, doing all of what we needed to do to make sure that the services and the coordination.
Is there anybody else serving the Latino community?
Oh, sure, yes. As I said, you look at the Fairhaven Clinic,
Okay.
Is phenomenal. Hill Health Center. In terms of Latino organizations, Centro San Jose, who provides obviously some support. But there were not there. There's not much of us around. I don't think that as I think about this, I don't even think because we're the oldest Latino organization.
I'm just thinking if JUNTA goes under, what happens to people?
We can't let that happen.
Where do people go? We're not going to let it happen.
We can't let
You've
that
got
happen.
a fundraiser coming up September 6th.
We have a fundraiser coming up, and again, and I have to again say, even as we were looking at this, after October, November, it's amazing what donor. We were getting checks, for $10 and $15 and $100 to help in terms of the evacuee. And it was that's really what kind of has also sustained us to be able to buy, not gift cards, food cards for families. We're placing people in hotels. They're coming with nothing. Donations. Yale University has been phenomenal in terms of the support. And so it's been really, again, it's kind of been those agencies and individuals and people who know the work, who, come with food and, just come with whatever they can to provide, again, in terms of the support. But we do have a fundraiser coming up, which is a gala held every year.
I'm so excited. I cannot wait.
It's going to be great. It's on Thursday, September 6th at Amarante's. And
it's going to be food.
And it will be, yes,
food that reflects culture.
Well,
some of it.
Yeah, it'll be a nice spread in every sense of the word, and we are honoring some just phenomenal people. Kika Matos, who we all know and love.
Yes, and she was the executive director.
That's right, she was.
JUNTA
that's right.
A few years back.
That's right. So she's being honored. Rick Fontana, who again has been phenomenal, and Bill Groundstein, who is
my friend and neighbor.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Who used to be your neighbor too, because you used to live.
Yeah, I lived on Bellevue.
On Bellevue.
Yeah, that's right.
I live in the house that was next door to your house.
Okay. And so yes, and so we're honoring 3 amazing individuals who certainly have not only supported JUNTA but have supported our community in so many ways and in so many years, and in some ways even beyond our community. Making an impact around the country. And so it's an exciting event for us. Again, it's an opportunity to raise money that we desperately need. And and we're going to continue obviously to reach out and to try to to get as much support as we need, because as I said, at this point we're desperate. We really need
Tell
some help.
everybody how to find you. What's the website?
So JUNTA, so it's JUNTA, JUNTAINC, juntainc.org. We are located at 169 Grand Avenue, and we're open every day from 9 to 5, and soon after Labor Day it'll be 9 to 8.
Whoa!
Because we provide adult education classes in the evening in our center. So as soon as school gets back, we get back kind of in that mode. And our number is 203-787-0191. And so we are here. You can reach us via our website, which we understand needs a lot of work. But again, that's one of those things, yeah. Yes. So, but there is a link there, and there is information there on the gala, and so you can go ahead and just go on the website and join us on the 6th. And if not, think about giving us a donation.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah. How can people give donations?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Anytime?
Yes, people give donations, and in some cases, people are buying. In fact, just yesterday, I had someone who is not, has given us tickets. They're not going to be here, so they're not, but they bought 2 tickets. And so that also helps us tremendously to be able to, in every way that we can, to be able to support kind of this work.
Okay. So tell me, because I know you're going to be leaving in the spring.
So I'm going to be leaving. Actually, I'm going to be leaving. I'm hoping not to be here for the winter. So that's my goal. Okay.
Oh, so
that's my goal. So
out.
Yeah. So
I'm a bird. I'm flying.
Yeah. But it's exciting. I mean, tomorrow is it's a big day and an important day for us, because the board will be interviewing 2 final candidates.
Oh, so you've been doing the process.
Oh, yes. We've been doing the process, and and so we're excited. It's taken longer. I thought that this was only going to be for me, like, that by May, I was going to be gone, and it's gone on a little longer, which is fine. But because it's important to obviously bring someone who certainly understands the importance of this work, and who in some ways, has done some of this work. I mean, there are challenging times, as I said. We have some vacancies that are very critical vacancies, the development for one, and so the board knew that they wanted to bring someone who had experience in a lot of these areas, and so I think it's been worth the wait, I guess.
Okay.
And so tomorrow will be the final interviews. And
and then deliberations.
So there may be someone at the gala. There may be a new director at the gala. I don't know, but certainly soon.
Wait for the white smoke up from like the Vatican. Like, has a new executive director.
But it will be soon. It will be soon. And then, I've committed to stay certainly through October is kind of my, kind of my timeline.
Okay.
And then I'll be, heading south.
What has it meant to you, Alicia, to do this work? Because this is an unexpected job. Like, I don't think you were thinking when you retired.
No. This was the farthest thing from this. First of all, was the farthest thing from my mind. And in fact, what I was considering, because I knew that at some point this Florida move was going to need to happen. And so, in fact, what I was, looking at kind of down the road was whether I would go back. I worked at the district. I graduated from Southern with a social work degree. And I started the Board of Ed as a school social worker. And then, obviously then became, went into administration and was principal of Hill Central and supervised a number of departments, and then ended kind of my last 10 years was at adult ed. And so I was really looking at, whether I wanted to work, going to Florida and looking at kind of Florida certification. So that's what I was in the midst of when I was approached, because I knew that, and planning to go to Florida for the winter. That was my plan. And so when, so in October or September, when I was approached, I mean, this was kind of the farthest thing. And, it's interesting. I've served on a number of nonprofit boards, but I've never worked for a nonprofit. So this has been a whole different learning curve for me.
Yes.
And, you know, in the Board of Ed, when I was the, you know, principal of adult ed, you know, I knew what my budget was. I knew, you know, and that budget went from July to July. And so, you know, and then of course, we, you know, we would have grants here and there, but I knew what I had. So, and having, you know, served on nonprofit boards, very different when
Then
you're
running one.
when you're running one. And
Yeah.
so even things as basic as trying to figure out the computer, you know, because it's been a while since I've kind of worked, you know, it's been 4 years since I've been out. And so trying to figure out, you know, the Google Chrome and Google Docs and kind of all of that kind of stuff. So this has been kind of a learning curve for me, but there was no way that I would have said no. Knowing certainly my history, remembering, you know, the times, as I said, when I was growing up, and the start of not only Junta. I mean, during my you know, my history here, saw, because my mother was very much involved in here, and so it was not just Junta that was at Crossroads, was a result of the people that I knew, Bumpe and Carlos Rodriguez and Tommy Reyes, who was at you know, was at UNH and was in school at that time. And so I you know, we are Latino Youth. I mean, all of these agencies, Fairhaven Clinic, all of these agencies, Hill Health Center. I mean, they're celebrating 50 years. My mother worked at the Hill Health Center with Tony Harp, with the mayor.
Wow.
You know, back
That's some
back
good
in the day.
That's some good stories.
So yeah, so I know, you know, been very much involved in terms of the history, and you know, more as a bystander. Then I was high school, and then I went on to college, and then I went away, and then, you know, so over the years, I mean, this is, you know, this was hard work for those, you know, as we know, for those founders and those activists back in the day, in really, you know, looking at, you know, wanting to have, you know, our community receive the services and the attention that was important. And so it was kind of a no-brainer for me when I was asked, and decided to do this, even though it was not never would I have thought that I would be.
See, I know you as an artist too.
That's right.
I know you as an artist, and so where does that fit in the new life?
I have not had a lot of time for that. But, you know, that was, and you know, I want to say that I never in my life really remembered being, I don't even remember taking art in school. I'm sure I did at some point. So it was not really, and it was really, I have to say, it was a collage class that I took at Creative Arts Workshop, probably about 20 years ago, that in some ways also changed my life. And it just introduced to me a whole other experience that, you know, just in terms of learning. I work primarily with fiber. Textiles is what I'm interested in. I love collage. I love mixed media. But it was really also art that helped me through, you know, and I know, you know, some of the significant, I lost my son, an only child, 24 years old, to gun violence in the city. And I've also experienced cancer, and I've experienced a lot of things. And again, the love and support and my faith is what's helped me, but art also helped me to be able to kind of get through a lot of those things. And so I just also want to, you know, as we look at a lot of cuts, and I know that there are a lot of things, and I just want to, again, just really encourage, particularly for our young people, that they need, you know, art is it's as important as math and everything else in terms of their lives, because in some cases it's what actually saves people's lives, and it gives the opportunity for people to, I was just reading in The Independent, Henry Green, who also experienced some things, and but he was, you know, a talented, thriving, and in some ways it was art, right? It was his art that helped him as well, in terms of it. So
that's a good point. I like that. That's a good point. So as we wind up this conversation, what do you hope for Junta?
So I hope Junta next year will be celebrating its 50th anniversary.
Will you come back up for it?
Absolutely. And I just hope again that it continues for another 50 years and beyond, that it continues to, you know, that that the last 50 years, in terms of the work that it has done and the leadership that it's taken in this community, that in some ways has made this community, I think, all the better for it. I do think that even in terms of the diversity, and I remember back in the day with the resident ID cards, and and that was a big, as you know, and I mean, I was at adult ed, so which actually English as a second language was the largest program there. So many of our students were students that are, again, fit into kind of this diverse, they come from all over the world pretty much. And so I just hope that Junta continues to be at the forefront of being able to help each and every person, not only Latinos, because let me just say, Junta is not only, there's kind of an assumption that we only service the Latino community. That is not true. It's anybody that walks in our door, and regardless of where they live, because we now are servicing throughout the state people who are, particularly with the hurricane evacuee situation. So I just hope that it continues to be a place that is able to help folks, improve their lives and empower people, and to continue to be a strong voice and an advocate for diversity and for Latinos and for immigrants and for poor people and middle income people and for everybody. All right. And again, and I just thank you and kind of thank everyone, and please continue to support us. And again, those checks come in handy. So
September 6th.
In whatever way.
September 6th is the gala.
September 6th is the gala.
At Amarante's. And the tickets are how much?
Tickets are $85.
$85, and you will spend $85 on a good night in New Haven drinking.
There you go.
So go and give it to a good cause and help Junta do their work.
And again, reach out to us, 169 Grand Avenue, juntainc.org, and our website.
Yes. Alicia Caraballo, it was so nice to sit and talk to you.
It's good seeing you.
I've enjoyed this very, very much.
So have I.
I've enjoyed this, and I wish you all success. I hope I'll see you at the gala. I hope I see you before you fly.
Yeah.
South.
Yeah. Well, and, this community will always be my home.
I
and my
think
granddaughter, so I will be away, but
we'll see. I mean, you'll be back. I know
exactly right.
You'll be back
right.
and forth.
This is home
because
for me.
you can't leave this community.
No.
Like you're like, I'm not going to leave this community.
No.
So,
especially those hot summers in Florida.
Yes, you'll be back.
I'll be back here
for the Connecticut coolness.
My favorite season, the fall. Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, all right, Harry, I'm on my way out. Thank you. I'll see y'all tomorrow. We'll spend some more. My last day of the Aretha Franklin tribute, and we'll just play more of her music. Thank y'all for listening to Lovebabz Love Talk today on 103.5 WNHH Radio.